Welcome to Decker Tech. I'm Aaron Decker, and today is patch day. There is a new balance patch out for Across the Obelisk, including some other quality of life changes, which are honestly the more important things. But let's talk about the patch stuff and the balance stuff. I will do a recap at the end, kind of the state of the game on what teams are good, bad, the ugly, kind of the takeaways from all this patch in general. But there is a lot of important stuff I'd like to talk about first, so don't be afraid to skip to the end for that. And I got plenty to talk about on the idea of updates and Across the Obelisk and balances and stuff like that. This is also a bad breathing day. If you hear me stop talking, it's because I'm muting the microphone to, try to breathe. So I apologize for that, but this is a kind of a time-sensitive video. I can't really delay recording it. So yeah, please take that with bear in mind. I am not offended if you click away because you hear any sort of throat clearing or stuff like that. I should be able to catch most of it with the microphone, and my sound settings are pretty good that you won't hear any of it, but I make no promises. I will do my best. I guess that's my only promise. I will do my best to avoid that. All right, so first off, this update's a good update. That's if that was your takeaway, that's all you need. Also, I got in the background here some old content. You can kind of see what M16 was previously, much slower than a current state of things. So yes, today's update's a good update. Could it be a better update? Yes, but if they had a spreadsheet guy, because you have to remember this is an indie company. It is only a three-man team. One of those is an artist, fantastic artist, by the way. So your expectations have to kind of match that. Their team does not include a spreadsheet guy, a numbers cruncher. I am not a spreadsheet guy, but I am a hobbyist spreadsheet guy. I have all sorts of games that I have made spreadsheets for. I mean, every game you got to have some information that you can't really. You gotta crunch the numbers, calculate it out, find the best way how it works, because they are some complex games. Some of them it's all about there's just too many numbers for you to have to process all at once. You just got to find the best of the lot. Like card evaluations and stuff like that can sometimes be the case. Other ones, it's how do stats interact with each other? How much life is this actually giving me? Path of Exile is a notoriously number crunching kind of game. You have like this one right here is just me talking about effective hit points, and the calculations here are crazy. But when you compare that to Across the Obelisk, turns out Across the Obelisk is actually about as complex as Path of Exile when it comes to number crunching for damage calculations, card evaluations, and effective hit points and stuff like that. And with that, today's patch hit the sharp and resistances. Those are the two biggest ones I want to talk about here, because in all the damage calculation of Across the Obelisk, those are two of the great multipliers. And there's just so many things. There's card balance, there's buffs, there's debuffs, there's multipliers, there's additives. I can't speak here. Like all these things interact with each other in complex ways, and you can only see so much of it at once. There's something what I like to call painting the elephant. If you aren't aware of this, there is a really great analogy for perception. It's the blind men and the elephant. If you are not aware of that story, please go look it up and learn it. It is excellent. I could talk for weeks straight, like literally a week straight, on how important perspective is and how that the elephant analogy is really a big deal. So, but the idea is, you're looking at this elephant, you can't see all the bits of the elephant. You're actually probably even blind. You can't, you're not, if you can't see it, you're going to have to feel your way around. And if you don't feel all the pieces of the elephant, you're not going to realize it's an elephant. And Across the Obelisk is a big enough, complex enough game that there are many factors to it. And it's okay that some people don't see all the pieces of the elephant. I don't want to belabor that too much, but the idea is, not everyone's going to see all the pieces. So when you're making conversations about this game, understand there might be blind parts for you on the elephant that you don't see. There's also the scenery around the elephant. We're not even going to talk about that. But this elephant, just by itself, is a big deal. And you might not see all of it. You might be talking about just the trunk of the elephant, like Madness 16, Madness 0, new player, experienced player, this team, that team. There's such a big elephant. Such a big elephant. Anyway, the reason I bring that up is that unfortunately the blind spot of the elephant, I think, for the devs is the number side of things, and that's okay. Like they've made a really good game, and all the pieces are there, but they don't have. It's hard for them to grasp all the numbers at once of what things are affecting. I bring this up because if you look at these numbers, I just picked up the vulnerable, and I made a small little calculation. I should have been talking. I should have had the game. I'm sorry. You're bored looking at the spreadsheet. This is just the max resistances that I can get on any given damage type, because when you're dealing damage, it has to be a damage type, and the damage is calculated separately, and there's all sorts of factors go into it. This is just the resistances side of factors, not the rest. And on it, there's different rates. This is all assuming restricted power, max difficulty, because what applies at max difficulty applies at lower difficulties. You know what I mean? Like it's not because I think max difficulty is where we need to balance. I think because max difficulty is the most limited scope, so it's easiest to talk about, because anything that affects max difficulty affects lower difficulties at either a greater effect, if that makes any sense, or a let's get to the details. Let's talk about the numbers here. So this is yesterday's numbers before the patch. I say yesterday, you're probably watching this much farther in the future. I apologize. All of my references are today is patch day. And these are the rates that are lower the resistances, how much stacks up, the maximum you can get per each one. And this is the total resistances I can lower the enemies. This was yesterday. This is today. And you notice, let's go look at the, we've added a couple perks because there's all this stuff on the left side here. There's things like perks, there's items, there's character passives. There's so much that goes into this. It's just a very complex beast here. And so the takeaway for today's patch for me is yesterday we had it such that slashing and piercing, like physical in general, had the hardest time lowering resistances, that and holy, but they also had the access to sharp. So sharp being a big deal as it is what was powering these up, and they could get to this max. You know, we can get to negative 95 most of the time on most of the monsters. A lot harder with slashing than piercing because, you know, piercing was doing better. And then today's changes, because there was a big sweep to the vulnerable, these are down to slashing and piercing are going to struggle a lot more, and holy is still one of the weaker ones. Now, I say all this, and I remember that I'm saying this is a good patch. I like this patch a lot. The history of patches for Across the Obelisk were half, like 3 halves at a time, which for math people understand that 3 halves equals an eighth, and an eighth is an 80% nerf. So I'm very happy that Sharp only got hit by 1 across the board, and that Vulnerable was only halved, instead of Vulnerable halved and something else and something else. As it is, we still got hit. I still think it compounded a little more than some noticed, because with the changes to the sight for Sylvie, we now have less. Like that lowered the max resistances that a piercing team can do. And then with the vulnerable changes, that lowers the max resistance that piercing can do. And the sharp changes, that lowers the amount of damage that a piercing team can do. So piercing team got hit 3 times. But compared to previous patches, that's not nearly as bad. Last time there was a fire patch. Fire patch got halved, and halved. So it got an 80% nerf. We're now only in like the, what is this? 50% nerf? Little less than 50%. This is like a 40% nerf to piercing if we're just talking about the resistances side of thing. So I'm happy with that. That's not, it could be a lot worse. And the developers, it's a 3-man team. One of them's an artist. So of them, only 2 of them are going to be talking balances. And honestly, I think only 1 is going to be doing the balances, and they have some input from those around them. And it's okay that they're playing whack-a-mole instead of having a deeper, like, it's okay that they go to try to fix one thing and they affect more than one thing, because what happens is, because of these changes to the overall thing, not only are piercing and slashing hit, but holy got hit a little bit more than the other ones, relatively speaking, because things like cold actually went up. Cold now has more access because it can do burn charges to lower resistances. I know I'm just looking at graphs here, but I apologize. But if you notice, if I flip between these two, today's patch, the elementals got hit a little bit, but because they were so high to begin with, they don't care. They were not relying on vulnerable. Vulnerable took the biggest hit. And so it's the physicals and some of the mentals that took that hit. But of the mentals, the only one that really struggles right now is Holy. And I mentioned this, and I forgot to mention this at the beginning. What I did is I went through all my old saves. I played like 3 or 4 different combats, the ones that were most affected by this change. And my Grookly team still turn 1 the Archon. Instead of taking 2 Carnages, it took 3. Oh no, not a big deal. I still went the distance. The Sylvie team, I was still able to turn 1 the first combat. It was a little more of a struggle, and if I executed it wrong, I left a couple left up with like 1 or 2 hit points left. So it's a much closer thing there. But the Act 1 monsters and the final boss, the slashing and piercing the resistancing isn't as effective. It's more like the oozes in Act 2s and 3 that you got to be aware of for a slashing and piercing team. But by then you have access to things that you can get around those resistances because you can amplify your damage so much. Because in this game, once you hit level 3, all the teams can do all the things. Like, if you have enough synergy, your team comes online at level 3 and you can defeat everything. I say that, but on my Holy save, I had a... Let's go back to the gameplay. I'm tired of looking at this screen here. My Holy team with Reggie, kind of similar to what you see on the screen here. If you remember, I did a resistances video, and I talked about vulnerable and resistances and how they make such a big difference. And whether that affected how heavily this vulnerable got hit is up for debate. And man, anyway, that team on that fight, I could not kill the Angel with... I think I tried it. I definitely tried it with a Corruptor, and I couldn't kill the Angel with a Corruptor. Without the Corruptor, I think I still couldn't kill the Angel because she was immune to Sanctify. So, Holy right now, I know cannot get past Angels if built standard. I probably will still build it the same way. I just can't kill Angels. I will just always path around an Angel, and if I have an Angel on my run, whoops, I've probably lost the run. Or I have to have some way to... really manipulate the turn order or stun her. I'm gonna have to bring back in it used to be you'd run in the day the paralyze. There's an ice spell for mages that says paralyze the target. I'm gonna have to start running that again on my Holy team, because Holy is now in this point, and let's go back to the graph here, is to this point where it might struggle to bring down anyone that has max resistances. You can't see it here on this screen, but on... Whoops. Clicking on the wrong things here. Down here at the bottom, these Angels are super heavy Holy resistance, and so if they have any modifiers to it, they just go up, and they purge Bless and stuff. Like, they're really intended to aim to fight back at Reginald. They're the Reginald counter. So it's acceptable that that's the one that he struggles with the most. Now, some of these other teams might not have a full counter like Reggie does. That's fine. I don't expect that of this game. And that's really what I hope the big takeaway is here. Now let's go talk about the takeaways. The takeaways, I think, are do not have expectations of this game and this patch and these balances that are unrealistic. This is a 2-man team. 3-man team. Side note, artist, fantastic artist. If there was a game mode I can enable that says only fight Nagas, I would run that most of the time, because I love the color palettes on the Nagas. They have so much color to them, and I think that the green biome, it's sad that I normally go to the spider lair because I like the north side of the map where the Nagas are, because they are just very pretty to play against. Like, I love fighting. There's, without random monsters on, there's one fight that has a Naga of every color, and man, is that a fun fight for me. I take a screenshot of it every time, and I post it on Discord, just saying, man, look at this fight, it is so pretty. Like, that's the kind of stuff you should be expecting and hoping from this game, because that's what their team is good at. Right now, their team does not have a numbers cruncher, a balancer. This is the blind side of the elephant for them. They have to stretch to make it happen. So take that with a grain of salt, and don't have expectations that are higher than what they are. As it is, I'm perfectly happy with this patch, because the only thing that got, like, I think too heavily hit was vulnerable. And I can, as it is, I can work past that currently. It's not game breaking for me. It is probably too much, but considering their small team and the team that they have, that's fine with me, because I'd rather they be focusing on other things like fixing bugs. Hans is, if you ever have noticed, he will burn the candle at both ends to make sure that bugs are fixed as quickly as possible. Every time a patch hits, I don't think he sleeps for like 3 days. Like no joke. So I'm more interested in them fixing the multiplayer bugs, which they did in this patch, and trying to streamline multiplayer disconnects and resyncs and stuff like that, because that is very important to the quality of the game. I'd rather see them add more artwork and cooler monsters and color palettes. I'd like to see some Act 4 monsters that have more stained glass on them, because the stained glass is pretty. The kind of grays of the black and white knights is a little like, they can use a little more color in my opinion, or they can just add more monsters in the act that have color. Like, I think that'd be great. They're planning on adding more acts and more story nodes and stuff like that, and the blue biome needs an update. So this team, you're just gonna have to accept the balance changes as they are, because this team specializes in other things. So play into your strengths, kind of thing. And the strength of this game is not going to be its ability to balance well. I think the game is in a playable spot. It definitely needed a balance change because Sylvie was just rolling over everything. But as it is, I personally, depending on the difficulty of the game, I can roll over anything with any character. Like, it's just, I find this game right now with perks added is in a point where I can kill anything with anyone. And so that's just where the game's going to be for now. And that's okay. And we kind of have to accept that it is. Right now, if I were to make changes, my changes are much more heavy-handed on buffing things, and this is kind of what. Well, let me show you. This is where we're at now. This is where I'd like us to be, but as long as we're near this, it's okay. Like, yes, Holy is super gimped right now, and the physicals are kind of struggling, but I'm okay with that. I'll get over it. It'll be fine. That make any sense? Like, I don't know. I feel like I babbled too much. Like, I had a script, and looking down at my script, I hit most of the parts. But as with all things that you may or may not have a passion for, or that you enjoy, or whatever you want to call this, like invested in, I may have gotten off, just kind of gone on a soapbox there for a bit. So I'm gonna look down at my notes for about 30 seconds, make sure I didn't miss anything. And I'll get back with you in a second. Go ahead and enjoy this this patch point 0.8 is what this was. Let's save the game. I'm gonna talk to myself for a bit here, don't mind me. Yeah, I have in my notes here to do a brief vulnerable discussion, and I talked way too long on those spreadsheets. I apologize. All right, what to expect in the future? Hopefully we get these minor changes. I say minor changes because, man, even though that vulnerable got hit so hard, everything else was a minor change. And I think minor balance changes are good for the game right now. I don't want to see heavy things. In the past, Fire and Holy and stuff like that got heavily hit. And that did not happen today, so that's a good thing. That's fine. And state of the game, I expect future patches. As long as small teams don't get angry, hopefully we get similarly good patches where it's just small changes over time, and the stress level of some individuals goes a little too high when things like this happen. It's sad to see. And what's different now? State of comps. Like I said, I went through all my teams. All of them are playable except for Reginald cannot take angels. That was expected, and I spoke about that with some friends of mine beforehand, but that's just because if you look at this, angels have dispels, angels remove bless, and the state of resistances right now, it's really hard to get holy resistances because stacking sanctify is an issue. You can't see it here, but right up here, cost per stack, the idea that not all debuffs can be applied at the same rate. Yeah, sanctify is one of those ones that cannot be applied fast, neither is bless. So the holy teams in general are going to be taking the biggest heat, but that's only on Madness 16. I do not see an issue with these teams at lower difficulties. I'm done babbling. Thank you for listening. My voice got a little better as we talked, but it was kind of rough on me, so I will be done for a bit. I will try to get some more shorts out for current deck builds that are already built. Those 60-second ones, look for those. There was a day where notifications didn't go out, so you may not know that those shorts are coming. I would like to let you know that deck techs will happen. There's just 60-minute shorts on YouTube, and it's just going to be quick down and dirty of add these, don't add these. This is why they're added. This is why they're not. I prefer the long form ones, but there's definitely a place for the short form ones. And let me know if I need to talk more about this or if I talked way too long about it. I would love to hear about it because I will plan on doing future discussions about patches and balances. This was my first step into it, so it was a little roughshod. So the more critiques, the better. And if you like what you see, please let me know or pass it along, and I will catch you later. Peace.